I try to gravitate towards what scares the hell out of me. So I try to gravitate to those choices that I feel uncomfortable with. That's why I decided to act. You know, at the old age of 29, I just said, I think I'm gonna be an actor. Why? Because it scares the hell out of me.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
David Zayas is an actor. He sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you begin your preparation process for a role?
I work from the inside out. So if I read a script and I read a character, I start asking, well, the first go through in the script is not me reading it, it's my ego. So I read it, think about, oh, I would be great for this. Oh, this is good. This line should, it's my ego. I've learned how to make friends with my ego. Reading through it and determining if it's something I want to do, if it's something that's going to, what parts make me look good. That's just my first go through. And then I process that out and I read it again just based on story. Does my character move the story? Is it an interesting character? Is he multi-dimensional? Is he stereotypical? Is there a conflict that would make certain scenes that much more interesting? So I break it down that way, and I'm not always right. Sometimes I'm like, oh, well, I made the wrong choice in that, but I always try to do that for a role, no matter how small it is. Like if I have one or two scenes in a film, what does that scene have to do with this story? And if it's a strong component of how to move the story ahead, then no small role is a small role. It's actually you're serving the writer after all, or the director.
And then once you have kind of a handle on who this guy is, if he's outside of your comfort zone, what do you do to emotionally get into that character?
And again, that's why it's helpful to read it the first way through. Let your ego read it, because then there's going to be bells and alarms that come out when you read it that goes, okay, I'm afraid of this section. I'm afraid of that. This is really risky. How am I going to be perceived with certain actions that this character takes? I mean, that's the initial. And what I try to do is I try to gravitate towards what scares the hell out of me. So I try to gravitate to those choices that I feel uncomfortable with. And so that's how I get into it. Usually in doing a scene, if we're doing a scene and the scene requires me to do something cruel, I have to know why I'm doing it. It can't just be, oh, he's just a bad guy. To me, that's good guy, bad guy. There are no good guys or bad guys. At least in a good script, everything's gray. You think they're good, but then they do horrible things.
Everybody has reasons to do everything that they do.
And so I usually gravitate to what's scares. That's why I decided to act. At the old age of 29, I just said, I think I'm gonna be an actor. Why? Because it scares the hell out of me. And I used to be a police officer. And when I start getting bored, if I'm in the excitement of being a police officer and the work of being a police officer, I have to now take what's going to drive my life. How am I going to do something that's going to top this? And the only thing to do is to just gravitate to something that you're not sure it will work, or you could fail, or you could discover new things in yourself. Me becoming an actor made me an enormously much more intelligent than another world if you're a lawyer, but it just opened my mind up to many things without judgment. A lot of the jobs that I've had requires there's a certain amount of rules. There's a morality about it. Being a police officer, you can't do certain things. You have to, you have to go through certain things. And what happens if I take all those rules out?
Yeah.
And act accordingly, moment to moment, with what's happening? Now you got a police that you would think is a good guy start doing things that normally, conscience and controversy is attractive to me. Whatever makes me feel uncomfortable, because that's when, if it's insecure, your real insecurities are going to come out.
Yeah.
If you're confident, your confidence will come out. If you're angry, the anger will come out because of the situation, not because that's what you're supposed to do in that moment.
Yeah.
And so that's how I try to do everything: plays, TV shows, movies. I try to, even if it's a small. I remember having I was in this movie called 16 Blocks that Richard Donner directed, and it's with Bruce Willis and Mos Def. Mm-hmm. And it was a role that went throughout the whole movie, but I didn't say much. So I always figured, well, what can I do to make this role, interesting to me? What's my thought? What's this character's thought process? And whether you see it or not, if you just move on that, a good director will see that, and you'll be on camera.
Yeah.
Doing certain things and maybe not talking. Or if you do it that way, sometimes you leave it open for happy accidents to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the few times that that's happened and I watch it, I'm like, wow, that looks real. That looks like that's a genuine reaction. Because when you watch yourself, all you see is yourself acting.
Yes, yes.
Whether you like it or not, you see yourself acting.
Yeah.
Hopefully other people will see somebody living in that role.
Yeah.
Not acting it.
But you won't. But you don't.
No, because I'm watching myself. So all I see is, I just start thinking, what was my thought process at that moment?
Yeah.
It becomes more technical.
Yeah. And do you make adjustments based on that? Like, I got to go bigger next time, or the opposite?
No, I think I just, whatever I do in the take, I trust. What I do try to do is, if there's another take, I try to maybe give, do a variation of what, but always towards making that moment work, that character interesting. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I tell. I don't make too many. I don't like do a take, go see the playback, and say, I got to make an adjustment. I'm not at that point where I want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what I'm going to do in a scene.
Yeah.
I just want to be within the guidelines of the script
and the reality,
and my reality, and then hopefully I take it off the other actor, Yeah. And so if I have a scene with you right now, you have your hand in your head, I'm thinking, well, how can I talk to him? He might have a headache. And so that's how I would approach the scene, and that's what makes sense in the, on the shot.
Yeah.
And so I always try to work off the other actor. Sometimes working off the other actor will give you ideas in the moment, and go for it. If they don't like it, they'll tell you that doesn't work. They've told me that.
Yeah.
I said, okay, let me try something else.
But most of the time it probably does, because you're in the
most
moment.
of the time it does, because it's still within the guidelines of the story, still within the script, but maybe the choices you make wasn't the intention of the writer, but the writer can watch and go, oh, I didn't know about that, but that makes sense. Yeah. And then those are happy accidents that might happen, and they happen few and far in between, but when it happens, it's like, okay, good. And that'll help serve the script.
I often imagine what's going to happen in my life, bad or good, but probably bad, that's going to make me finally decide to seriously dive into acting. I think I need something to throw off my life, because I'm so scared of of doing it. Yeah. You had a series of bad things that happened in your life that made you finally decide to be an actor. Is this right?
Well, yes and no. I decided I wanted to be in this business when I was 12. And I went to the movies with my cousins, and they were in the back row and they put me in the front row. I was only 12. They went to the back row to smoke a little weed, I guess. I don't know, back in the days, in the 70s, you know, I guess you could do that in the movies. But they put me in the front because, you know, I was 12. They wouldn't indulge me with that, you know. Yeah. And we went to see Dog Day Afternoon, Sidney Lumet movie with Al Pacino, and it just took me into the world of that. And I remember in the middle of the movie going, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to be involved in making other people feel the way this movie's making me feel right now. That's excitement. That's something interesting. And so I immediately wanted to become an actor. Now, I come from a blue collar family, and my speech wasn't that good at that time. It still isn't that good, but I made it work for me. And so I actually did tell my dad, yeah, I want to be an actor. And he was a good father, being a responsible father, he realized that that's not a very secure avenue to go. And so he encouraged me to do other stuff like blue collar work, like taking the police test, the fire test, all these city jobs, which he worked in. He was a sanitation man, and he had a really good career. He made, did 20 years, retired, had a pension, moved. I mean, it's what everybody wishes for their kids, is to so the whole artistic venture was just trapped in my mind. I couldn't really express it. Number one, because it scared the hell out of me. And when you're when you're young, you gravitate to what's safe, usually. And number two, I didn't know how to go about it. Like, what can I do? What can I go to school? And I remember they had I used to buy the Show Business. You remember Show Business magazine, the newspapers? Yeah. And they would always have auditions, like for the public to come in and audition. And I remember standing online for this movie called Luna with Bernardo Bertolucci to audition. But when I got to go in, it was a long line. I took off. I said, I can't do this. So I went back and I joined the service after high school. I went to college for a year, but it wasn't for me. I went to the Air Force for 4 years, came out, immediately jumped into the police department because I had a family. I had my son when I was 21. And anyway, I fell into, this is my career. This is what I do. I am a New York City police officer. How can I advance in this where I'm at? This is my chosen profession, with acting or show business in the background, still not knowing, even in my 20s, if this is something I should venture in, knowing that if I did venture into it, I kind of gotta squeeze out 100% in me, even though I have another career.
Right.
Do you want to do that? Am I strong enough to do that? Do I have the energy to do that? Do I have the compartmentalization skills to do that? And I didn't know the answer to those questions. But then, I think around 90, 91, while I was in Midtown North in the police, I had a couple of days off, and I was feeling kind of like I'm not really happy with what's going on. I was going through a divorce. And I was walking up Times Square, and a friend of mine who's a policeman who works in the theater district, usually, it's called the theater squad. I was walking up and I ran into him. He goes, hey, and I started talking to him saying, and telling him what's going on. And he goes, well, come on, I'll bring you into this play. And the play was A Few Good Men on Broadway. And I sat in the front row, and again, I was just mesmerized. But now I'm not 12 anymore.
Yeah.
I'm 27, 28. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to go for it, see what happens. And the next day I enrolled in acting school. I switched my tour to midnight tour in my precinct so that I could have my days open to if I go to class or if I get a play, do a play. I wasn't even thinking about television and film at the time. I was just taking it one step at a time. I wanted to be a theater actor. And so as soon as I took the class, I remember the acting teacher's name is Ernie Martin. He just recently passed, a great teacher. He goes, just do it. He goes, in the first few classes, you'll know if this is for you or not, you know? And it was for me. I took some classes, I learned a lot. I then auditioned, that 92, I auditioned for this theater company, which turned out to be LAByrinth Theater Company.
Right.
So it was like me and all these like Judy Reyes and Stephen Alleviates and Liz Canavan.
Paul Calderone.
I met my wife there, Liza Cologne. Phillip Seymour Hoffman came the following year, and Paul Calderone was one of the original members, one of the guys that started it. And I auditioned, I got in, about 14, 15 of us.
Wait, I need to pause you because that's your first audition ever, according to what you said.
I had no idea how to audition. I went to the precinct, there was a VCR, and I kind of put, I think it was Kramer versus Kramer, and there was a monologue that Dustin Hoffman did, and I'm like, let me just rewind it. That's how I memorized it. I just rewinding it, and then I went in and I did it, and I was lucky enough to get in. That kind of changed my whole perspective on things, because now I'm in a community that share the same passion, and they're going through the same setbacks that you are. And there's nothing more bonding than that. And if you bond with a group of artists who care and find what's happening just as important as you're finding it, man, it's like, you know, it's amazing and it's rare.
Yeah.
So I did that. I did a lot of plays, and somehow I just ventured into film and television. You know, luck played a big part of it, but also preparation and hard work and stubbornness. I don't think about success fairly when I'm thinking about the actual thing I'm doing and how that I respond to that as an artist.
Yeah.
Everything else is out of your control.
Yeah.
You could do, 2 scenes in a film. The film may never be released.
Yeah.
You could do 2 scenes in a film. The film becomes a big hit. Next thing you know, those little 2 scenes that they gave you a corned beef sandwich for to do becomes a catalyst to getting your next job, or becomes a catalyst for your reputation and other people in the business to see, okay, that's a person to watch. So that's how I look at it. Like, how can I be as interesting as possible in this scene? I mean, if you're a director, you have to know the whole picture.
Yeah.
But if my character in page 10 is in an event that doesn't make sense then, but it makes sense in page 80, then that's a great arc to work in.
Yeah. You said once something about getting to the truth of the scene is what matters. Like that's the most important thing. Like getting to the truth, moment to moment, the truth of the scene. And it seems to me like so little can happen to take an actor away from that truth. And by this I mean, this is just something that keeps me up at night when I think about acting. When I think about how just going down this road with a director, if I'm in a play, and they're feeding me things that are taking me away from this truth, but they think that it's getting me closer to it. A wrong piece of backstory. You're building everything on that piece, but it's actually not making you connect with it. And then it's done and it's fine, but you're not locking into that truth. Is this something that you've ever come upon? Is this a fear that I have that's irrational?
No, it's not irrational. But I'll answer that by saying, so what? So what? You don't know what's going to happen. If they give you a direction and and the director's articulate enough to help you buy into that idea, even though it wasn't initially in your head, you can do that. Or you can have a conversation as to why you don't think that works for me. I've never really run into that because I'm pretty open when I work, and I want to serve the story and the director and the writer and the crew who are working 18 hours a day. I want to be able to collaborate, and sometimes in collaboration, you discover new things the moment of. Mm-hmm. You know, you could be doing the scene, you have a certain way you're thinking about doing the scene, and then the director gives you a direction that you didn't expect. Mm-hmm. How can you use that in the scene? Because sometimes all it takes is just the tone of what you're saying to change. If you can figure that out, it's great. Sometimes I figure it out, sometimes I don't. The one thing I love about this business is that it never gets easier. There's always ups and downs. Yeah. And no matter what level you are, going down usually requires a lot of rejection for you. So you got to be comfortable with rejection, or at least process it out quickly so you can move forward. Mm-hmm. But I always try to collaborate with the writer and the director, and being open and being truthful. There's a way to do that. There's a way to, like, if you totally disagree with the direction that's been given to you, or I'm not doing that. It's not helpful. Mm-hmm. It's not helpful. I try to avoid that. Yeah. I just ask questions. Try and be on the same page and see where they want to go to, because I would say 8 times out of 10, they're right.
They're onto something.
They're probably right.
Yeah.
So if I fight that off, like, no, I'm right, it doesn't set up a safe environment to do your thing. It's all about you knowing what you're doing. If it's a play, you're on stage from the beginning to the end, and there's a certain life that goes for 90 minutes or 2 hours. But then in film or television, they shoot out a sequence. And you may do a scene that's in the 40th page of a TV show that, in the beginning you made a choice, and that's what leads you. You don't understand that choice in the beginning, but then you realize what it is in page 40, that this is why you did what you did. Yeah. So I try to look at all of that. And like I said, this is all trial and error. So, some of the time you're right. Most of the time you might be wrong. You just have to make adjustments and not punish yourself for being wrong.
When Dexter came along, you had already been on Broadway, I think, with Anna in the Tropics, right?
Yes.
So put me back in your mindset. Like, I'm imagining getting a series and going 8 years is like that's a great thing for an actor. It doesn't even matter if you don't like the series. I'm not assuming anything with this. It happened to be a great series and a great role. But did it allow you to do other things that you wanted to do?
I come from a way of life that being steady on one thing is to me is satisfying. So I could have gone 20 years for Dexter. Yeah. It was great writing, great directors I worked with. The cast was amazing. It's the highlight so far of my career, those 8 years on Dexter. Yeah. It was just they wrote great things, and they were collaborative, and it was a good time, and artistically you had input. Yeah. You were able to talk things out. The cast were all professional, amazing actors, and so I learned from them and their work ethic. Also, even though I had a good work ethic, but to watch them, certain situations, and to me, so the longer the series went, the more I knew my character gave me the freedom to make interesting choices. And so it was very fulfilling as an actor.
And that's the interesting thing I always try to ask people that have been on long series. Having this unique opportunity to grow with a character. At the end of season 8, you knew more about this character than any new writer coming in would know.
Yes.
I mean, because you've lived with it and had it. And so they had to kind of consult with you in a way. Because you built this character.
But also they consulted with everyone because they're true artists. First of all, anybody who comes in new to write for the show had better studied all the episodes up to there. You know, with like, for example, with Angel Batista in Dexter, he had a high moral compass. So there was a storyline, and this is, I don't know, it might have been like the third, fourth season, maybe the third season, where all of a sudden I read a scene where he's going around in his car trying to get a prostitute. Now, you know, I was like, wait a second, this guy's been like the good guy in this series. He's the moral measure that Dexter wants to get to,
right?
As he explains it in a lot of the episodes. And now I'm going for, and then, but I didn't. I went in and I said, hey, what's going on with the storyline? You know, what's happening? And when they explained it, I was like, oh, yeah, he goes to get a prostitute because whatever, he's going through something, and then she turns out to be an undercover cop, and she recognizes him and she lets him go, and then he hunts her down in the precinct, and they become boyfriend and girlfriend. He becomes, you know. So that awkward thing turns into something that, you know, and then he has a speech to her where he says, this is how I was feeling, I just needed a connection. Like, you know, this is what he was thinking. And she accepted it, and then they had a relationship for that year.
But then you feel like any type of man can get low enough to maybe do something like that. Maybe not exactly get a prostitute, but on the level of needing connection like that.
You know, there might be some perfect people out there.
Yeah. You haven't met them yet?
No.
Talk to me about Primitive Grace Theater Ensemble. You started this with Paul Calderone, is that right?
Well, you know, how it started was, I've known Paul for many, many years, since the beginning of my career. I learned a lot from Paul. I think his talent, his work ethic, and his love for the arts. Anyway, he was having coffee with a couple of friends, and he invited me. So, like, you know, once a week we get together and have coffee, and we started talking about what we, you know, our careers and ups and downs and what's been happening, and along with life's ups and downs, you know. And so we said, well, why don't we let's get some people together, and, you know, let's play and see if any sparks happen. And so we started getting together with a group of people that we all knew and called up, and we started having sessions, and we finally decided that we want to name the group, and we named it Primitive Grace, kind of like the primal and the graceful, you know, kind of the men and women, and mesh them together. Because we were very aware of trying to get as much of an equal voice from women, much of an equal voice from multi-ethnic people, and a voice from LGBTQ. So we want to include everything, because that's what we do. That's the right thing. And so we started doing some plays, and it's grown into a kind of very inspiring, you know, theater company. You know, it's been ups and downs. It's tough to, you know, it's tough financially. It's tough, trying to get space, trying to make a name for yourself. But we have a lot of talent in our theater company. And Paul and I always on the same page when it comes to what would make this company better, and what could make this play that we're doing better. And it's been a great thing for me. It's been an inspiring thing for me, even though just like LAByrinth was back in the 90s, and can still continue to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was one of those things where I got my career is I'm doing a lot of things. I'm traveling a lot. Do I want to be a co-artistic director? Is this something that is going to interfere with the flow of, and so it kind of really scares me to do that. So I said, well, it's been working for me so far, so I'm just going to gravitate to what scares the hell out of me. And so I jumped in with Paul, and we created this space and this ensemble, and it's the struggles are still there, but we're moving forward.
And do you guys have a home, or is it a floating
It's a floating thing. We don't have a home. We've done plays in, Access and the Bridge Theater. We're kind of like explorers.
Yeah.
Trying to find any opportunity we could find to put our work up. Yeah. We do. Everyone is kind of joining forces for the love of what we do. That's it. It's for the love of what we do, because your success as a group will translate eventually, without you knowing, into success for you.
I believe that.
So I was saying I'm not going to be one of those actors that I'm just going to be focused on what I'm doing and making choices about what's best for me. Because like anything else, you're going to be wrong sometimes. So if you do it for self, you give without expecting anything, it's when you get those amazing things happen to you.
Yes. You said something that really changed my perception about something. You said, look, I used to be a cop, and I have played countless cops in my career. And you said, I'll play them countless times more, because every time I play a cop, it's an opportunity to play another human that happens to be a cop. And I don't know why that changed me so much. It has to do with a lot of things in life. Like when I see a cop on the street, I sometimes don't see a human. Mm-hmm. Just like when I see somebody that scares me, an insane homeless person or something that's walking erratically or something like that. I don't see a person. I see somebody I have to avoid or something like that. And the actors, when they're saying, oh my God, another cop, it's like they're not realizing it's a person. They're not they're playing the identity. The idea of it doesn't matter what they do, what their profession is. That just adds to the color of the human. Right? I'm imagining this is what you meant.
That's exactly what I meant. I don't care what the character is. As long as his journey is truthful. There are times where you may read a part of a cop and it's so stereotypical that be just as much as stereotypical as if I read a character that happened to be Puerto Rican and what they write for that person, and I'm like, so stereotypical. That's somebody who is not in the shoes of this person. So yeah, it doesn't matter to me what I play, as long as the character's journey is interesting and I could do something with it. I'm lucky when I read a script, I don't look at it but what they do for a living. I just look at the different choices this character makes throughout the film or throughout the TV show or throughout the play. And that's what I concentrate on. It doesn't really matter to me if it's a priest or if it's a cop or if it's a prisoner or if it's a politician. And I've played them all. Yeah. We're a lot more. There's something that connects all of us. There's something that bonds all of us if you let it. and that is that we are all flawed. We have flaws. Everyone has flaws. And that connects you to people. That can, together, to people that understand that about themselves, can create an interesting moment on film or on stage.
Yes.
You know, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, oh, this is my 5th cop in a row. Yeah, but I was able to do something different in each one.
Yes.
You know, and you shouldn't worry or care about how others have a perception of what you do. Because if people come up to me, they go, dude, all you do is play bad guys or cops.
Yeah.
You know, like if it's a bad thing. You know, it's like, it's just, every opportunity to act to me is a good thing, you know. Even an audition is an opportunity to practice what you do. Yeah. Even though, you know, if maybe you may not get the part, but it's still an opportunity for you to get in front of people and do something new. It's a chance to act.
Yes.
I still audition a lot. I like auditioning. If I don't audition for something, it's because I just don't like the character. Mm-hmm. You know, or I don't feel this character, you know, moves this story. Mm-hmm. You have to constantly explore things in the characters that you read, and explore things in your life, how you're changing in your life. You know, whenever something happens in my life now that's a total change, I'm like, oh, good, this is another layer I could put into what I do. You know, because it's if this what's happening now in our society, if it's going to get better, artists are going to be a very important part of that.
Yes.
Only if it's truthful.
Yes. David Zayas, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate this.
It was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.